Alright, so 9.1, completing the square and taking square roots. So learning targets today, solve quadratic equations by taking square roots, and solve quadratic equations ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0 by completing the square. Alright, so we're going to start by solving equations in the form ax squared plus c equals 0. So this is similar to what we were doing last week with complex numbers. We're going to look at isolating the x squared and taking the square root of both sides of the equation. So we have 5x squared minus 23 equals 0. We're going to solve for x. So they have it broken down into 6 steps. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to move this negative 23 to the right of the equal sign. So to do that we add. So that's where they're getting the 5x squared equals 23. Step 2, we're going to separate the coefficient, the number in front of our x squared. So this is 5 times x squared. So to undo that, we're going to divide both sides. So we're going to divide by 5. So we have x squared equals 23 divided by 5. How do we undo a square? We're going to square root. So we're going to square root both sides. So when we square root, we get 2 answers. We get a positive and a negative. So we're going to square root both the 23 and the 5. And then what we looked at last time is that we can't have a square root in the denominator. So we're going to, so multiply both the numerator and the denominator by the square root of 5. And so square root of 23 times the square root of 5, we can 23 times 5, put that all into one square root. So in this case, x equals plus or minus the square root of 115 divided by 5. Can you simplify that? I don't think so, because 23 is prime and 5 is prime. And so that's just, so this isn't in a square root. And yeah. And that's because if we look at this 23 and 5, this 23 and 5, this can be rewritten as the square root of 23 over 5, and that fraction doesn't simplify. So this is as simplified as it's going to get. And then there's just a refresher over here under Math Tip about simplifying, rationalizing your denominator, which is what we did yesterday, and I think you guys were. Okay.
So we have an assignment today?
Yeah, we'll have a new assignment.
No?
No, we won't. We should.
We should.
Should. All right, so let's just take it one step at a time.
So add 49.
All right, so let's do A together.
Okay.
All right. So we have 9x squared minus 49 equals 0. All right. So step 1, we need to move our constant. So plus 49. So we have 9x squared equals 49.
And then divide.
Alright, so now we're going to separate our 9 from our x squared, so divide.
Just kidding.
And this is a good time, if you can simplify fractions, to go ahead and do so. But does 9 divide into 49? Nope, so just leave it. Now we want it to be x equals, we have x squared, so how do we get rid of that square? Square root it.
Word.
But whatever you do to one side, you got to do to both. And so we have x equals, when we square root, how many answers do we get?
2.
2, we get a positive and a negative. Alright, so we have square root of 49 over 9. Now, since this doesn't reduce, we can separate. We can do square root of 49 over square root of 9. Square root of 49 is 7 over 3.
Awesome.
So x equals plus or minus 7/3. Not too bad, right?
That's terrible. Oh, God.
Alright, so I would like for you to do B.
Don't got a pencil. Can we do it on there? Oh, yeah, it's right up there. Let's do it on the whiteboard. Hey, guys.
Alright, so to solve the equation, we have Here we have 2 parentheses x minus 3 squared minus 5 equals 0. So we're going to use a similar process to solve this. So what we're going to do is we're going to add, we have our constant of negative 5, so we're going to add 5 to both sides so that we now have 2 parentheses x minus 3 squared equals 5. What we want to do is get our parentheses by itself, so then we're going to divide both sides by 2. So then we have x minus 3 squared equals 5 divided by 2. We have this square as our next operation, so we're going to undo a square, so we square root both sides. So then we have x minus 3, everything that was inside our parentheses, equals plus or minus the square root of 5 over square root of 2. And then we're going to add 3 to both sides. So they skipped a step.
So you can't distribute
Let's.
instead.
They skipped a step from here to here. Let's add that step in. So they have x minus 3 equals plus or minus square root of 5 over square root of 2. So we're adding 3 to both sides. Actually, let me back up. I see what they did. They rationalized the denominator from here to here. So they did that.
Okay. I got you.
And so they have square root of. Yep, so now we're going to move the 3. So now we're moving this 3 over, so you add it to both sides. And so then you have 3 plus or minus square root of 10 over 2. Alright, so let's do one. Let's do one. It's one thing to see the steps, but it's good to have the steps listed, and as you're working through, make sure you're checking the steps. Alright,
So you're going to add 49.
Alright, so we have 4x plus 5.
Can you distribute the 4 or no?
No, because this is squared. So if you'd have to FOIL, because this is saying that you have 2 of those. You'd have to FOIL that out, and then
just take
then
longer.
it would just that would be you're overcomplicating it. You guys could do it though, because then you could factor. If it was factorable, you could factor it either using slide and divide or however.
So plus 49.
So we're gonna add 49. What we're doing is you guys, at the end of this, will have lots of different ways to solve quadratics. Alright, so now we're going to divide both sides by 4.
Yep.
So we have x plus 5 squared equals 49. And that fraction does not reduce any further, does it? No. Alright, so now what?
You're going to get the square root.
Yep, I'm going to square root both sides. So when I square root a square, I'm just left with
X plus 5. 49. Square root of 49.
square root of 49
Over the square root of 4.
over square root of 4. Alright, so square root of 49 is,
7.
and the square root of 4 is,
Those. Oh, what? Oh, 2. Gesundheit.
alright, and then when I square root, how many answers do I get?
2.
2. So we have plus or minus.
And spat. Oh. Are you trying to get X minus 7? Yeah. So that's X just equals negative 5 plus or minus 7.
Alright, so then we're going to subtract 5 from both sides. And we have x equals negative 5 plus or minus 7 halves.
That's great.
So, how could we check our work? Yeah, we could take negative 5 plus 7 over 2, negative 5 minus 7 over 2. Those just 2 numbers, and then plug it in for x. And when we take 4 times whatever that equals squared minus 49, it should equal 0. So,
Oh, yeah.
when you reduce the square roots to the center of the yes, ma'am.
You didn't have to multiply by 4.
No, because the square root of 4 is 2. So we're going to do another one where we have to do that. Alright, so questions on this one? Alright, so let's do another one.
Hello, Diane.
So let's do B. So we have 3x minus 2 squared minus 16 equals 0. What's our first step?
Plus 16. Hello, Diane.
Alright, now what?
Alright, then you got divide by 3. So,
So it says something.
16 thirds. Alright, then you got.
Alright, does that reduce? Yes. 16
No.
thirds?
No.
No.
You're just square root.
I'm so sorry.
So
So square rooting both sides. So square rooting a square, so we just
X
put it
minus 2.
inside.
Then it's 4 over square root of 3.
Alright, so then when I square root,
Square
how
root
many
16.
answers do I get?
2.
So we have plus or minus square root of 16 over square root of 3.
Trace.
Square root of 16 is 4. Alright, so now we cannot have a radical, we can't have a square root in the
Times it
denominator.
by square root of
So we're going to rationalize our denominator.
12 over 3.
She just did
Come out will be 4
So we have 4.
4 square root of 3.
over.
Alright, does 4 over 3, does that reduce at all? Is there any comment? Okay.
And then you got plus 2. X. I'm good at this stuff.
Just get lucky, man.
Hey, don't hit the play. I hate the game.
Alright, so we have x equals 2 plus or minus 4 squared root of 3 divided by 3. And again, when we find to check our answer, we're going to put this into the calculator. So 2 plus 4 times the square root of 3 divided by 3. Plug it in for x, subtract 2, square that, multiply by 3, subtract 16, and it should equal 0 for both of them. Alright, so I would like for you to try one.